Hey girl, hey.
Hi. Okay, I feel like I'm sitting up so high. Jeez. I think someone adjusted my chair.
Yeah. How many people registered?
I'm taking a look as we speak. I just did a reminder um post just about 20 minutes ago.
Mhm.
Let me go in. Mm, Okay. All right. All right.
Hey,
Hey, Brian. Good to
how's it
see you.
to see you?
All right, so we're gonna do another minute or two, yeah, minute or so to let some folks join. I saw a couple other registrants that joined, but we are going to record today's session so we can get started, and this will be available to those that were not maybe able to make it. So I'm gonna hide that, and then we will get started.
Awesome.
Yeah. So the event will allow people to continue to join us. We're just gonna keep going. All right. And next time I'll have elevator music for us. I think it'll be really cool. And I was like, what genre do I want to go with? Is the question. So I introduced Dolly Parton to my son yesterday. So see how
Ooh, and
I know.
how did he receive that? Did
Oh,
he
he
like
was hopping and bouncing around. He was excited about the music. So
awesome?
all right, let's go ahead and get started. As people kind of pop in. I'm going to also put another thing in our chat too, just to encourage them to introduce themselves. So their name, location, and LinkedIn profile if they feel comfortable to share. But just so we're all on the same page and making sure we're in the right place, this is the job search makeover. This is the first of the 4-part webinar series where we're going to talk about your job search and how to transform it entirely. The first one we're going to start with today is standout interview techniques. All right. Let me just drop this in the chat. Okay. Okay. All right, so next slide. And I also want to make sure that I mention this too. This webinar series is also in partnership with MPH Tech Academy and The Plug. I'm going to do some intros for the amazing coaches we have that we have today alongside myself. So let's go into the next slide. And this is just the hello welcome. So if you already have done that, thank you. If you haven't, but would like to, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, your name, location, and LinkedIn profile, anything you're looking to learn specifically today. As far as our list of contents, we have a few things. So we've done the welcome. We'll tell you a little bit about us. Today's topic is standout interview techniques. And there's going to be some QR codes that we have toward the end to either join the MPH Tech Academy community or connect with a few of us coaches to keep the conversation going. And then we'll wrap it up with a couple of thank yous. All right. And if I'm going too fast, feel free to slow me down. I can tend to be long-winded, but definitely just want to make sure that I get through all of our topics today. So introducing us. So about a little bit about us. So we are a group of coaches and mentors offering non-traditional advice on resumes, job search strategies, interview preparation, and more. Today, we are talking about specifically standout interview techniques, but no topic is off limits. And we hope that you walk away from our session with actionable steps to achieve your goals. So you have myself today, Ariel Balagoon. I'm a career and RevOps coach. We have also Brian Kwa, who is who is a career coach as well. Brian, do you want to say hello?
Hey everyone. Yeah, founder of MPH Tech Academy, where we help job seekers land their next career. Happy to be here. Thanks, Ariel.
Desiree?
Hi there, I'm Desi or Desiree. I am a product manager or principal product manager at Verizon. And I am also the owner of The Plug, which means I plug you into those many things of being able to understand the product world, the data science world, and all things tech.
Perfect. And last but certainly not least, we have Danny Hom.
Hey, I'm Danny. I am currently a sales development representative with MPH Tech Academy, and excited to be here with you guys.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you all. So I also want to share a little bit about what we've done together and just how we drive impact, improve value. So together, we collectively represent these different areas in industries. So finance, business development, data science, product management, program management, project management, recruiting, revenue operations, and sales development. So we have a whole wealth of information and knowledge and experiences to share. Together, we have over 15,000 followers, a combined 40 plus, years of experience, as well as over 1,000 careers impacted. So we are really looking to continue to grow our numbers, increase our followers, increase our impact, and definitely make sure that we are giving the information to people that need it in real time to meet them where they're at and help them get to their goals. Team, anything you want to add to that? We have a little bit of time, but I wanted to make sure that if there's anything else you wanted to share on top of that, as far as our impact and value and what we're looking to do, feel free.
Well, we're basically trying to add a sense of equity to how we look at the strategy of interviewing. We do know that sometimes you're in a room where people do not look like you, or either you come from a background that isn't technology, and sometimes you have that feeling of imposter syndrome, right? We're here to give you the tools and also answer those questions and give you an untraditional or non-traditional approach of how to get to that dream job or how to be able to feel like you're the best person for the job.
Thank you, Desi. All right. Okay. And so the next slide is just talking a little bit about standout interview techniques, but I wanted to make sure that we all started on the same page. So there are different types of approaches we can kind of start our storytelling when it comes to interview methods. Start our discussion and topics that we bring up using these different methods. So I wanted to start with STAR. So STAR, STAR method is situation, task, action, result. That method focuses on clearly explaining how you handled a specific scenario. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Then we have the Carl or Carla, they're a spinoff of each other, but ultimately that method is talking about context, action, result, learning, and the application of your learning. So this method adds a reflection of the application on what you learned from your experiences. So that's what we want to hone in on with that method. Then we also have the universal interview method, which helps you showcase broad transferable skills by framing your experience and value in a way that aligns with key competencies. So I have below the typical questions that would come up in an interview and where these methods could apply. So questions to assess your problem solving and adaptability. So you'll hear from an interviewer, tell me about a time, ... Give an example of ... Why should we hire you? And so these are where you would go into your storytelling methods, STAR, CAR, or universal to answer the question that they're asking, right? And you'll use your experiences and your skills to give them the answer that they're looking for, essentially. Now, as coaches, this is where we want to provide some unconventional approaches. We're going to talk about it because these methods don't always work and they don't always land. And if you're an interviewer, sometimes you get really, nervous and you're like, oh, I swapped my story around and I forgot to tell them this part, or I'm really long-winded. And so I didn't keep it concise. And so we're going to offer a little bit of strategies on what we can do a little bit differently, but also help you stand out in the talent pool when you are interviewing. Team, anything else you want to add on that before I move slides?
No, go ahead.
All right, cool. We are moving through good stuff. All right, so let's talk about it. So again, I just wanted to show kind of the framework of the star and car slash Carl Carla. So again, you can prepare beforehand. We always want to make sure that we're prepared, but then go into situation, task, action, result, or context, action, result, lesson, and application. So I'm going to stop there as far as sharing the screen. We have so much advice to share just in general about these frameworks and what we can do about it. So, Desi, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to pick on you. I want to first start by asking how you would approach, before you even get into these methods, how would you approach an interviewer who seems disengaged? So they seem distracted and you like, I got my plan, I prepared, but maybe it's not landing. How would you talk about how to get them excited to talk to you and keep the conversation going?
I first remind myself of the role itself, right? Like in many situations, you're going to be having to deal with stakeholders who are not engaged, who are not excited, who are not, and your job is to get them excited. Your job is to get them excited about what you're talking about. So, how do you figure those things out, right? You kind of ask about commonalities when you're introducing yourself, throw in a thing that is like that's actually a personal thing. For example, I love bugs. I'm afraid of roaches, but I love bugs. I think bugs are cool. I think ladybugs are the great germinators of the world. They're cute, they're adorable, and they're poisonous to most things. So, like, I think about something that gets them excited. So, whenever you get that link to someone's LinkedIn, look into that a little bit, right? Try to figure out, okay, where their journey started. Don't get creepy with it, of course, but more so to pull out some key points of things that you can talk about and talk to. That is a way to bring them on the journey. Or even like, hey, where are you located? Asking where they're located. For example, there's a heat wave, as was mentioned earlier, in San Francisco, right? Being able to say, oh, you're in San Francisco. How are you doing it with the heat wave right now? Yeah, and I could say I'm from Houston. It's pretty much 90 degrees every day, and that becomes like a laughing piece, right? Like, of where you're breaking the ice, right? You want to bring your personality to this conversation. So that's the first thing, right? So whenever you see that they're disengaged, it's not necessarily your job to fix it, but it is your job to deliver. So if that person isn't able to hear your insights or hear you through the interview, you kind of have to, the only person that's not going to benefit from this dialogue is you. So kind of figure that out of how you want to go about that, right? As you're starting to look through their LinkedIn of what insights you can pull from it. Then before going into the question, what I've noticed with a lot of persons that I coach is they just solve. They try to jump to a solution. So in the engineering world, they usually tell you the first thing of how you fail an interview is you jump to coding too quickly. You jump towards solving a problem. But how are you going to solve a problem if you don't really understand what the problem is or the question is being asked? So the first thing that you should do before entering your star, your Carl, your Carla, Carlos, and all them is repeat the question and ask if that's what they meant, because sometimes they can clarify it for you, and then also it allows them to know that you're listening and that you're actually trying to understand the problem to be able to address it. Then we go into the techniques, right? So I personally I think Carla or Carl is interesting because you're actually having it in more of a dialogue way. The biggest thing that I see in a lot of interviews is I can literally see the gears like turning in someone's head. And it's not to say that's bad per se, but I can say usually if I ask you a question that you haven't necessarily mapped for, that isn't in your star framework, a lot of the times you're going to get frazzled. You're going to be like, okay, hold on, I didn't think about that. I didn't prep for that. But this is an interview. You have to be prepared for all things, right? Because let's be real, all the frameworks in the world are amazing in practice, but you don't always have that time, ability, availability, access to have all those things in place to be able to actually perform the metric, right? So the first thing before, as you're studying and preparing, start to practice as if it's a conversation. You have a partner at home, a friend, they may get annoyed by you, but hey, call them up and be like, hey, let me talk to you real quick, you know, and just so that it comes off naturally to where you want someone to almost during your practice or mock interviews to interrupt you so that you're used to someone not to always have a traditional format, right? Because you may not always get that. You may have a person who hears the answer and they stop you right in the middle, or either they hear the wrong answer and they stop you right in the middle. And if you're one of those people who've only studied this way, you may get frazzled and then boom, there it goes, right?
Yep, yep. And then to that point, Desi, Danny, you had a good point about being nervous or excited, like to be answering some of the questions that may come your way. And so if you're in this mode of, I just studied my answer or my framework or my how I want to answer this without the interruptions that Desi was talking about, what's a different way that we can kind of switch gears for ourselves to kind of help self-regulate?
Yeah, I think also too, like being honest with the interviewer too, because they know that you're nervous. They know that you are excited to be there. So just kind of let them know that too, right? Because we want to feel that, you're authentic about being there as well. And I would say, to help regulate would really just to, memorize your story. And I love the question about walk me through your resume. And that usually helps me keep like what is the word, organize of how I'm going to tell my story. And then that way, when I do have a question that might not be relatable to Star in the way that I want to be, if I remember my story in chronological order, and usually your resume will help you do that, it helps me like answer the questions a little bit more confidently and more quickly to recall.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And then I want to kind of pan over to Brian too, because we talked a lot about this before. These questions that may come up in the interview that are not to your script. So Desi mentioned that already, but they may stop and redirect the conversation. Maybe you're running out of time. Who knows? They're trying to get through X amount of questions in probably a very short amount of time. So Brian, we talked about like these unconventional questions that may come up in an interview. I spoke about in a previous experience that I had where I was asked in an interview to count, how would I go about counting how many trees are in San Francisco? And someone else on our, as far as our coaches, I think that was you, Brian. How would you set up a career fair? Where we're like, this kind of threw me for a loop. Like I had my star, or my car, or my Carla, and that doesn't quite fit. So Brian, can you tell us, when we get into these places and we're interviewing, and maybe that the questions don't quite fit the script, how we can adjust? And in these particular questions, what are interviewers really looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to first, kind of just piggyback off of what Desi said in the beginning of building rapport basically with your recruiter or interviewer. Like that's so important, right? Just to relate where you're from. Like, is there anything that you guys can relate on that common ground and even like, laugh about like a quick joke. And then just acknowledging what Danny said about acknowledging that you are a little bit nervous and you're just excited and that should be natural and just taking a deep breath and then answering the question. And then to answer your question, it's always great to clarify the question being asked if it's ambiguous. And back at my time at Google, where I was hiring product managers, if you didn't clarify, that's actually minus points. So make sure you're clarifying the question. And then to loop back to your question, I think identifying what type of question that is and what story you're going to use is super important. So the question that you just asked is more of a cognitive question, right? And seeing how you go about cognitive slash situational, right? And how you go about problem solving that. And tell me about a time isn't quite the right match for that. So you should have different stories or different ways of answering that question. It's not always going to be the same thing. But how I would go about that is just really clarifying the questions and thinking about all the different factors and just being genuinely curious on being your methodical self, right? So yeah, I think that's the best approach. And then just trying your best to really think out loud and calling out biases and calling out assumptions. That's huge, right? And that's, you know, usually for the technical piece. But yeah, that would be my advice.
Thank you, Brian. And I also want to talk a little bit about the job description itself. So and this is going into your preparation before you get into your star, your car, your Carla, Carlos, whomever, and all their family members. In your prep, use the job description to your benefit. Look for key items that are standing out to you to help identify which stories you tell, because not all stories or experiences that you have will resonate with the type of job that you are applying to and getting ready to interview for. So you should always kind of have in your back pocket, like maybe 3 to 4 stories that you can draw upon, and then you can kind of spin it or twist it a little bit so that it makes sense for the interview that you're in. Because again, there's different types of interviews. There's interviews with recruiters, like Brian used to be, but then there's also stories with the hiring manager or a panel of folks that are looking to evaluate you. So there might be some stories that resonate with one audience versus another. So you do need to be able to pivot. Or if there is one streamlined story that you want to make sure is carried throughout your interviews, because you'll go through several rounds, making sure that you expand upon that as you go deeper and deeper into your interview rounds. Adding a little bit more detail, adding a little bit more descriptiveness, or how much more value you were able to add, to really help drive home the message that you are the right fit. I have experience, and based on this and my skills and what I've done before, it is applicable to what I can do for you and provide value to you starting day one. All right. Y'all want to chime in on that? Because I have a lot more to get through. There's so much more I wanted to cover for interviews, but I want to make sure that we're covering each step to make sure that the audience member out there is getting what they need. And then I saw a little something in the chat, so we'll get to that in a hot second, but I just want to make sure if there's anything else we should add before moving forward.
No, I figure we should, for the purpose of time, let's continue.
Okay, all right, sounds good. So I see in the chat, someone recently graduated from Northeastern University with a master's in digital media. She's currently located in Boston, and then she shared her LinkedIn. Or they shared their LinkedIn. Is there anything you wanted to add about being a recent grad, or anything that we can do to shift our perspective for recent grads that are going through the interview process too? Because that stood out to me, because when I was first starting out, like I was like a deer in the headlights, and I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't know what I needed to know to be successful. And then now in this job market, which is pretty darn tough, like how can we pivot to make sure that recent college grads are also supported as well? So anybody want to chime in before I continue on?
I would say, as a college grad, more so understanding you have, okay, let's see. You said you have a master's in digital
Masters.
media.
Yeah.
Okay, so with a master's in digital media, what is it that you want to, what's interesting to you in tech, right? That's the first thing, right? You don't want to go into a space just because it seems like it pays a lot of money and then you'd be miserable. Let's be real. If you're focused on something that is in that conversation of misery, you're not going to excel that far just because you're not going to have the curiosity to get you to the next space, right? That's the biggest thing. What are you curious about? What is interesting? Like, my world is nerdy as I don't know what when it comes to data science, right? But I actually like what I do. Like, I can geek out on this for like hours and be so content and happy. Product management is what I love. I can geek out on that. I can go to people's webpage and just be like, so who's using this? So for me, I found my area of where that aligned, of where I will always want to be curious to learn more and more. Technology is a space of innovation. So, that being said, many companies have requirements of once you enter at a certain level, they expect you to be curious enough to be able to up level within the first couple years of you being there. That is pretty much all of the companies. If you do not get or a promotion into another level, the thought is that you're just sitting there and you can't bring anything to the table. This is the space of innovation. Nothing gets old, things get old and things keep moving, right? So you have to figure out what your superpower is. I would also say figure that out even as you're going in through interviews as well. Like as you're looking over the JD or job description, what is it that you can bring to this conversation that makes you different? So, for example, someone's asked me, so Desi, what makes you, what's your superpower? I said, my curiosity. And then they said, what? And I said, but my gift is data science, right? The reason, because I can do things that many people can't do sometimes, and data science is my jam. But my curiosity is what allows me to keep learning, what keeps helping me grow and be able to be curious enough about the user, be curious enough of why this isn't working, be curious enough to learn from someone else. You see how the curiosity just keeps going? Curiosity is that seed, right? So, and then also understand what their values are. Amazon has the leadership principles, right? So, being able to talk through that in a normal conversation and dialogue to as you're giving your feedback answer, they hear they hear the job that you're applying for, they hear the ways of how you're going to change these things around. Like you can even in your scenario say, for example, when they're talking about e-commerce or something about data, right? Well, in my job, I've done this, this, and this, but I can see at this job, at with this role, this is what I would do as well. You see how I'm still allowing for you to have that connecting piece? So make sure that you have that. That is something that will always help you. You understanding what your strengths are, understanding your weaknesses, and how your strengths can allow your weaknesses to flourish.
That's excellent. The curiosity is key. And I also want to add one other component around that too, is around specialization. You can't be a jack and a Jill of all trades. You can very much try to be, but then you're gonna end up solving problems that have no interest to you. And again, it's your career and what do you want out of it, right? And so like having a specialization and say like, well, this field is so broad, but my superpower is X, Y, and Z. This is where I live. This is where I grow, where I thrive, where I can think about innovation all day, all night. I even sleep about it. I sleep and I even dream about it. So having a specialization is key. I can talk a little bit about my experience, like starting out early in my career. So I was very much in a place where I'm like, I just need to land my first corporate job. I was working 3 part-time jobs and it was crazy. And I was like, I've graduated. I need to do something different, right? And so I was like, I'll just take anything. I'm good with numbers. I'll take anything. So I landed my first role in finance, actually. And I had a lot of ideas. It was a big company, but I had a lot of ideas and they weren't really here for it. And so I'm like, I need to change my strategy because I have innovation on my mind. I have efficiency on my mind. And as I grew in my career, I realized my knack or my superpower is making complex things simple. And it's not that like people don't understand or they don't know what they're talking about. It's just, I love doing the research, doing the work, and kind of being like a human cheat sheet for people, but in my realm, in my superpower. And so then I had to learn, I had to let that finance arm go. I evolved into more of operations. I then evolved even more into project and program management because just of my natural skill of organization and not liking to see things fall apart or trains crash into each other. So, for lack of better words, in professional settings, but uh, having gone through those experiences, you learn a lot about yourself, and you have to be open to being curious and exploring new things. So then you can feel very comfortable about your specialization, and what you will ultimately become your brand and what you bring to organizations time and time again. I see some head nods. Brian, Danny, you want to add to it?
Yeah, 100%. I would say, put your best foot forward, really start networking with every single person and just really be mindful of your brand. That's what's a mentor in the past had said to me. And I didn't really understand it until, I was in it and realizing, yeah, what do people say when you're out of the room? That's your brand,
Mm-hmm.
right? Are you a hard worker? Are you lazy? Are you always accepting new challenges and maybe not the best at your job, but you contribute so much more in different areas, right? Culturally, and you're genuinely interested in helping people, right? People can see that. And I wrote a post today about being genuine and kind to everyone, right? And how these people in your life can really open up doors for you. And a quick story that I had was literally my first job in tech sales. I remember there's this one individual that was kind of down on his luck, and everyone was kind of like making fun of him, like black sheep. But I went ahead and said, "Hey, is everything okay?" Just checked up on him here and there. That individual, we became friends, and he remembered that act of kindness, and he went on to a bigger tech company, Uber, and was like, "Hey, I'm more than happy to refer you. I think you'd be a great fit." And I was one of the few, if any, that he really tried to convince. And if it wasn't for him showing me another, opportunity, I don't think I'd be here to even get the opportunities that I've had. And really that transformed my whole entire career trajectory. So yeah, you just never know who you're going to meet. Definitely put your best foot forward and make sure you have a brand.
Sure, for sure. Danny?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for reminding me of your story of starting out in finance because I remember when I got out of college, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and it was kind of overwhelming because I was like, "Oh, this sounds really cool," or "This sounds great," and I was like, "I love money, so let's just make money, right?" So that's how I got into private banking and finance, and then I realized that you don't really. I didn't get to figure out my superpower until I started working a whole bunch of different positions and jobs, and then you kind of hone into it because I kind of feel like sometimes a lot of us feel pressured to be like, oh, I need to love this right away, or I need to know what I'm good at to land this type of job. But in reality, it's like you have to work kind of a whole bunch of different ones to kind of figure that out. So that's okay if you're working at a job that you might not be crazy passionate about, but you'll definitely get closer to the things that you're like, hey, this is going to align with what I should be doing or what I shouldn't be doing.
For sure. A lot of times when I work with my clients, I talk about the what do you want statement. And it takes some time to get to a place where you're very solid in what you want, like what industry, what types of roles. You can be very granular and specific on like employee count. Like, I don't want to work for big companies and I don't want to, work for a company that has over 1,000 employees because that means I may be lost in the shuffle. Or I really want to hone my career and have a diversity of experiences. And so I want to stick to SMB or small to medium sized businesses, so no more than 500 employees. So you have to figure out what you want, and that definitely comes into play when you are interviewing. So just kind of bringing us back to the interview component of things and saying, okay, based on what I want, how do I prepare for these interviews? And something that's I'm kind of off script here, but just kind of coming into play since we're kind of dovetailing into different backgrounds based on who's here today. Um, how you prepare for one industry could be totally different for another. So I do want to make sure that that is said and it's understood, because if you're focusing on, say, the medical industry versus tech, two vastly different experiences that you can have, two vastly different ways that you'll have to prepare and execute when you get not only in the interview but the jobs too. So keeping that in mind, that if you don't have a focus, it will kind of, you'll be a little bit spread thin. But if those are your goals and you have a driving force what's pushing you to medical and in tech, just know that it's going to maybe take you a little bit longer because your time and your efforts are split. So that's one thing that I wanted to put out there too. So having a goal, having a focus, and knowing what you want will help drive your activity for your interview prep and for your job search as a whole. Because my hope, at least for folks that are out there, that you're not spending X amount of months wasting your time, because you're using the wrong strategy or you're not really focused, and you're not seeing the results that you want, right? Danny, I saw you come off mute. You want to add to that?
Oh, oops. No, but I wanted to maybe ask,
Oh.
you know what? While we have Kanisha and Magnus on, I just wanted to ask them like, hey, have you guys been doing interviews? Are there anything that has been maybe like you had any questions or stopping you guys from anything while we're here? So I just wanted to throw that out there while we still have a little bit of time.
I didn't have any questions in particular but that last point that you guys brought up about the fact that you should really go in knowing what you want and then just kind of the pivots within each of your careers, especially Danny. It kind of really resonated with me. It was like uh I feel like I pressure myself a lot with the positions that are available to me, and I don't stop to figure out like what it is that the true purpose is. I just run in blindly, or whether it be for the money or the position or the skills that I think I'd immediately get out of the position. So I really appreciate that comment.
Awesome. And I will say too, like, also don't limit yourself too much. Like sometimes like I thought I wanted to work for a smaller company and actually ended up working for one of the largest banks. And I realized I was like, whoa, this is actually great. And when I actually got to a mid-sized banking company, I did get more personalized, attention, but it also, there's a lot of things you don't get when you're not with a big company and you're like, whoa, okay. So yeah, I just want to make like, just remind ourselves to also not limit ourselves too much, even in the roles too, right? If you're like, I don't know if I can do this or that sounds fun, but always give it a shot, right? Be curious.
I like that. Kanisha, did you have anything you wanted to add? No pressure. Oh, Desiree, you're on mute.
I was saying, she said in the chat, I've noticed interviewers show disinterest and that it always breaks my confidence. So I wanted to know how to go about that. So realize that you, again, like going back to what I was mentioning before, your job is to fulfill a need, right? Make sure that you're in capturing that, right? Focus on some icebreakers also. Like I was saying at the beginning, like before you go into the interview, see what they're about, like see what their they have on their LinkedIn. Sometimes that could be a topic of interest, knowing where they're from or saying, hey, oh, where are you located? Asking those type of questions. But also don't allow anyone to break your confidence. That's the first thing. You know your stuff, right? Make sure that you feel strongly about what you know. This is why practice makes perfect, right? So you, like, for example, I can walk into, no one, I walked into an interview, I can tell if I passed or failed. I can tell if I did good or bad. You should be able to do that, right? When you leave your interview, you can say, I got that, or yeah, I fumbled a little bit. But meaning that you should have some accountability, well, self-awareness, let's say that. Self-awareness of how you want to perform. Yes, even if they're disinterested, it's still your job to kind of bring them on the journey because you're going to always be in positions, no matter what your role is, where someone's not interested in hearing what you're saying. So look at that as like an interview, like almost like a job experience. How would you convince someone, because mind you, this is usually an interview question, how do you convince someone that has a higher priority than you, that your priority means something is higher, or that you should focus on your priority? Because technically it's the same thing. Their priority is just to ask the question and be done with it. Your priority is to land the job and get a job, right? So y'all don't have the same priorities. So how do you convince them that your priority means something? So that is a part of the interview. That's a part of the game. And so you losing your confidence in the middle of it, that doesn't show that you can be able to deal with difficult conversations, difficult people who don't want to listen to you, right? You don't always have the authority in every room to be able to say, hey, you're listening and listening right now. So ask yourself in regards to a feedback loop, how do you deal with conversations on the job when someone is not interested or they're not wanting to do something that you're needing done? And how do you convince them? And go about it the same way. because this is a part of the technique of the role, right? No matter what your role is. So and then making sure again that you know your information to a T to where no one can shake you. And that's the thing of being confident as you walk in, because you're not performing for that particular individual. You're performing for the experience to get the job. That person is just a hurdle that you're jumping to get to the next step until you get into the end of the race.
I agree with that. And also for y'all out there too, get yourself in the mindset to shake off the nerves before you get into the interview. So if that means you have a little dance party, you listen to your favorite song and blast it so that you are in a good mood and it's resonating and you're happy. Whether that is, you have your favorite coffee next to you while you're doing the interview, or something to remind you, a picture of someone or something that brings you joy so that you stay in like on a higher frequency, honestly. So that if they're doing something as an interviewer that is not resonating with you, like you go back to your picture or your coffee, you're like, I'm not gonna let this shake me. I'm gonna keep going. This is just a small hurdle to get to what I want, which is landing this job, just like Desi was saying. Um, so we are coming up on time. I'm gonna just share quickly a thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. It's the start of the job search makeover web series. So I have some QR codes up here. Feel free to take a screenshot of the screen if you like, but you can book a career strategy session with me. You can join the MPH Tech Academy where you'll see Brian, Danny, and I'm also in the academy as well as Desi as well. So you can see us all there, keep the conversation going. You'll have a community of other like-minded professionals, and being able to kind of introduce yourself, make warm introductions, be unapologetic about saying, hey, I just joined this community. I'm looking for a job and I'm just trying to build my network, and LinkedIn maybe just be a little bit too big for me or too scary, whatever the case may be, just to build your network there. So then as you bring it to LinkedIn, it also helps. And then I also have a QR code for Desi as well. You can book a consultation with her. She has so many different options available for you all. And I just want to make sure that the conversation doesn't stop here. We talked about standout interview techniques. We talked about the STAR and the Carla method specifically, and then kind of gave advice as we naturally do as coaches and mentors. But let's keep the conversation going. There's no question that it's too silly or nothing we haven't heard of. So just, reach out to us and let us know where we can continue to support. And then I would also like to say that we have the second part of our job search makeover series coming up next Wednesday, same time. So it'll be October 9th at 12 o'clock, where we're going to talk about cracking the ATS, so applicant tracking system, and resume one-on-one. So we'll be focused on that. That'll be myself and Brian, who are going to have a joint effort on there. But again, if you have questions in your job search strategy, be unapologetic. Do what you need to do to get yourself in a better situation so that you can land the job that you want sooner than you expect, right? Like don't stay stuck is the call to action. Don't stay stuck. Unstuck yourself so that you see the progress and you see what you need. See maybe some blind spots along the way. So I'll leave us with that. And then I think that's it. I can stop sharing. Any last thoughts? I want to say thank you, Desi, Danny, Brian, Kanisha, Magnus. Thank you for staying on with us. But like I said, if you need anything, we're here for you.
Yeah, thank you, Kanisha and Magnus, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, team.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah. Thanks for hosting, Ariel.
Of
Yeah,
course.
thanks.
Of course.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.